The sun hung low over the Pacific, casting a golden haze across the harbor of Monterey Bay. Jack Harlan wiped the salt spray from his weathered face as he steered his old fishing boat, the Sea Whisper, back toward the docks. At 52, Jack had spent 3 decades chasing cod and halibut along the California coast, his hands calloused from lines and nets, his life as predictable as the tides. The boat was a relic, its hull scarred from years of rough seas, but it was his, paid for with sweat and solitude after his wife left him a decade ago. No kids, no family left in the sleepy coastal town, just the rhythm of the waves and the occasional gruff hello from fellow fishermen. That morning had been like any other. Jack had set out before dawn from the bustling marina, where charter boats bobbed alongside commercial trawlers and the air smelled of diesel and fresh-caught fish. He'd dropped his lines in the deeper waters off Cannery Row, the historic stretch of waterfront that still echoed with the ghosts of Steinbeck's sardine fleets. The catch was decent, a couple dozen rockfish and some lingcod, but nothing to brag about. As he hauled in the last net, something unusual caught his eye. A small, sleek shape darting beneath the surface, circling the boat with an insistent energy. At first Jack figured it was just a curious seal, common enough in these waters protected by the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. But as he peered over the gunwale, the shape breached briefly, a baby dolphin, no bigger than a Labrador, its gray skin glistening under the sun. It was a bottlenose, young and playful, flipping its tail as if begging for attention. Jack chuckled to himself, shaking his head. "Little guy's lost his pod," he muttered, tossing a scrap of bait overboard to shoo it away. Dolphins were protected, sure, but they weren't his problem. He revved the engine and pointed the bow toward shore. The Dolphin didn't follow at first. Jack glanced back once, twice, as the Sea Whisper cut through the swells, but by the time the harbor lights twinkled on the horizon, there it was again, swimming parallel to the boat, keeping pace effortlessly. Jack slowed the engine, irritation flickering in his chest. "Go on, get out of here," he called, banging a paddle against the hull. The young Dolphin responded by leaping closer, its blowhole puffing a misty exhale before diving under the keel. When Jack tried to pull away, it surfaced right beside him, nudging the fiberglass side with its snout like a dog pawing at a door. Word spread fast in a place like Monterey. By the time Jack motored into the slip at Fisherman's Wharf, a small crowd had gathered, tourists snapping photos on their phones, a couple of local deckhands leaning on pilings with smirks. Old man Ramirez, who ran the bait shop, waved him in. "What's the holdup, Harlan? Got a stowaway?" Jack killed the engine and tossed a line to secure the boat, but the Dolphin had wedged itself against the stern, refusing to budge. Its eyes, dark and intelligent, locked onto his as it emitted a series of clicks and whistles that echoed across the water. "Damned if I know," Jack grumbled, kneeling to get a better look. The little creature was exhausted, its flanks heaving, but it pressed closer, almost playfully ramming the boat as if to say, "I'm not leaving." The harbor master, a burly woman named Carla Ruiz with a clipboard perpetually in hand, pushed through the onlookers. "That's a calf, Jack. Probably separated from its mother. We gotta call Marine Mammal Center." She was all business, her voice carrying the no-nonsense tone of someone who'd seen her share of wildlife rescues. Monterey's waters teemed with marine life, but dolphins didn't just latch onto boats like this. It was unnatural, almost desperate. Jack felt a pang of something unfamiliar, pity maybe, or unease. He'd always respected the ocean's creatures from a distance, but this felt personal. He reached out with a gloved hand, and the Dolphin met it halfway, its rubbery skin cool against his palm. A soft trill escaped its blowhole, vibrating through the water. The crowd murmured, phones held high, capturing the moment for social media. Before the story goes deeper, make sure to subscribe for more narratives like this. As the afternoon wore on, experts arrived from the nearby aquarium. They tried everything: acoustic deterrents to mimic predator sounds, boats to herd it toward open water, but the Dolphin clung stubbornly, circling the Sea Whisper even when Jack stepped ashore for a coffee at the wharf's Greasy Spoon. He watched from a bench, nursing a black brew, as the calf breached repeatedly, its calls growing more plaintive. Whispers rippled through the harbor. Poachers? Pollution? Something bigger? Jack couldn't shake the image of those eyes, pleading in a way no animal should. He'd seen dolphins before, leaping in synchronized pods, but this one was alone, vulnerable. By dusk, with the sun dipping behind the coastal hills, the decision was made to keep the boat in the water overnight. "We'll monitor it," Carla said, clapping Jack on the shoulder. "You did right bringing it in." He nodded, but sleep evaded him that night in his small apartment above the docks. The harbor's foghorn wailed intermittently, and in his mind, he replayed the Dolphin's insistent nudges. What was it trying to tell him? Jack stared at the ceiling, the salt-stiffened curtains fluttering in the breeze off the bay. Little did he know, the truth waiting beneath those waves would unravel everything he thought he knew about the sea, and about himself. The next morning dawned gray and misty, the kind of overcast that clung to Monterey like a second skin. Jack was back on the Sea Whisper before the coffee shops opened, the Dolphin still there, floating listlessly now. Its energy had waned overnight, but it perked up at his approach, slapping its tail against the water in greeting. "You're a persistent one, aren't you?" Jack said softly, more to himself than the animal. He scattered some fish heads from his cooler, watching as the calf snapped them up eagerly. Word had spread overnight. The local news van was parked at the wharf, a reporter with a microphone interviewing Carla. "Unusual behavior," she told the camera. "Bottlenose calves don't typically bond with vessels like this. Could be injury, disorientation. We're running tests." Jack steered clear, preferring the solitude of his boat. But the Dolphin's refusal to leave gnawed at him. He donned his waders and slipped into the water for a closer look, the chill biting through his neoprene. Up close, the calf was a marvel, smooth flanks marked by faint scars, perhaps from rough play with its pod. But as Jack's hand trailed along its side, he felt something odd, a subtle tremor, and then, wedged in a gill slit, a glint of metal. His heart skipped. Carefully, he pried it free, a small jagged piece of wire, rusted and barbed, like from a trap or net. The Dolphin clicked approvingly, nuzzling his arm as if in thanks. But that was just the beginning. As the day unfolded, divers from the Marine Center arrived, their tanks clinking against the dock. They urged Jack to move the boat farther out, but the calf shadowed it every inch, its calls echoing like a siren's warning. Beneath the surface, shadows stirred, larger shapes in the depths, hinting at secrets the harbor had long buried. Jack gripped the railing, a knot forming in his gut. The ocean, his lifelong companion, suddenly felt alive with unspoken peril. Jack stood on the deck of the Sea Whisper, the salt-crusted railing cool under his palms as he scanned the water. The mist had burned off by mid-morning, revealing the harbor's familiar sprawl. The red-tiled roofs of Cannery Row climbing the hillside, the distant hum of tour boats ferrying visitors to the aquarium, and the ceaseless lap of waves against the pilings. But today, the scene felt off-kilter, charged with an undercurrent he couldn't name. The Dolphin's presence had drawn more eyes, curious locals sipping coffee from styrofoam cups at the wharf's edge, a cluster of kids pressing against the chain-link fence, their voices a buzz of excitement. He'd radioed Carla earlier, his voice gruff over the static. "That wire I pulled. Looks like fishing gear gone bad. You got someone who can check it out?" Her response had been clipped, promising a marine biologist by noon. Jack wasn't one for waiting around. He'd spent his life fixing problems with his own hands. He rummaged through the boat's cluttered hold, pulling out a length of rope and a bucket of chum to keep the calf occupied. The Dolphin responded with a series of eager clicks, circling closer as he lowered the bait into the water. Its movements were fluid but labored, the young body betraying fatigue from whatever ordeal had brought it here. By the time the divers arrived, the sun had climbed higher, warming the deck enough for Jack to shrug off his jacket. Leading the team was Dr. Elena Vasquez, a wiry woman in her 40s with sun-bleached hair tied back in a practical ponytail and a wetsuit that hugged her athletic frame. She'd grown up in Monterey, the daughter of a cannery worker, and her passion for the bay's ecosystem was as deep-rooted as the kelp forests offshore. "Mr. Harlan," she said, extending a hand scarred from years of handling marine specimens. "Thanks for calling us in." That wire you found could be from illegal gill nets. We've been seeing more drift from unregulated waters up north." Jack nodded, gesturing to the calf, which had taken to shadowing his every move along the boat's edge. "She's not budging. Tried scaring her off yesterday, but it's like she's glued to the hull." Elena knelt beside him, her eyes narrowing as she observed the Dolphin. It breached once, spraying a fine mist that caught the light like diamonds, before submerging with a playful roll. "Bottlenose calves imprint fast when stressed," she explained. "But this level of attachment, unusual. Let's get in the water and see if there's more embedded." The divers slipped overboard with practiced ease, their bubbles rising in steady streams. Jack paced the deck, the wood creaking under his boots, his mind replaying the morning's discovery. That piece of wire wasn't just debris, it was deliberate, the kind used in ghost nets that snagged wildlife for days before breaking free. Monterey's fishermen prided themselves on sustainability, permits, quotas, the whole regulatory dance. But whispers of black market operations had circulated for years. Poachers slipping in from international waters, targeting everything from abalone to sea otters. Jack had always dismissed it as harbor gossip, the stuff of late-night bar talk at the Sandbar Saloon. Underwater, Elena's team moved like shadows through the turquoise depths. The calf swam alongside them warily at first, then curiously, darting in to inspect their fins. Visibility was decent that day, the water clear enough to reveal the sandy bottom dotted with starfish and the occasional scuttling crab. But as they circled the boat's keel, Elena's voice crackled over the comms in Jack's headset. "Jack, we've got something. Hold on." He gripped the radio tighter, heart thudding against his ribs. Minutes stretched like taffy until the divers resurfaced, hauling themselves onto the swim platform with gear bags in tow. Elena's face was pale beneath her dive mask, which she pushed up onto her forehead. "It's not just the wire. The calf's got a tracker embedded in its dorsal fin, surgical, professional work, and traces of what looks like pharmaceuticals in the water around it." Jack's stomach twisted. Tracker? Like for research? But even as he said it, he knew better. Legit studies used visible tags, not hidden implants. Elena shook her head, unzipping her wetsuit to reveal a notebook already filling with sketches. "This is sophisticated, GPS-enabled probably. And the drugs, sedatives, maybe growth hormones. Someone's been experimenting on this pod." The revelation hit like a rogue wave. Jack thought of the shadows he'd glimpsed the night before, larger forms in the gloom. Not predators, but perhaps the remnants of a disrupted group. The calf clicked insistently from the water, as if urging them on, its eyes flicking between Jack and Elena. She placed a gentle hand on its flank. Poor thing. Likely separated during a capture attempt. Bottlenoses are social. Losing the pod is like losing family. Word rippled outward from the boat like rings in a pond. Carla arrived with a team from the Marine Mammal Center, her clipboard swapped for a tablet loaded with protocols. "We need to isolate this," she said, her voice low. "If there's poaching involved, it could tie into bigger rings. Ivory from elephant seals, fins from sharks. Feds might get looped in." Jack felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. He'd always seen the ocean as a provider, not a battlefield. Now, his simple life of lines and lures felt tainted. As the afternoon deepened, the harbor buzzed with subdued activity. Reporters hovered at a distance, held back by yellow tape Carla had strung up. Jack helped the team rig a temporary pen around the Sea Whisper, a net barrier to keep the calf contained while they scanned for more evidence. The Dolphin protested at first, thrashing against the mesh, but soon calmed, pressing close to Jack's side of the boat as if he were its anchor. He tossed it another fish, watching it devour the meal with desperate hunger. "What the hell have you been through, girl?" he murmured, his voice thick. Elena pulled him aside as the sun began its westward slant, casting long shadows across the water. "We're prepping the calf for transport to the center tonight. X-rays, blood work. But Jack, that tracker, it's active. Someone knows we're here." Her words hung in the air, laced with urgency. Jack glanced at the horizon, where the open sea met the sky in a seamless blue. For the first time in years, the vastness felt threatening, hiding not just fish, but human greed. He spent the evening hours alone on the deck after the team departed for supplies, the calf's soft breaths the only sound breaking the twilight hush. Fireflies, rare for the coast, danced over the waves. Or maybe it was bioluminescent plankton stirring in the current. Jack's mind raced, calls to old fishing buddies, vague memories of suspicious boats spotted off Point Lobos. The truth was surfacing, piece by jagged piece, and he was caught in its current. As night fell, the Dolphin's calls grew fainter, a lullaby laced with sorrow pulling him deeper into the mystery. The harbor lights flickered on one by one, but the shadows beneath the waves seemed to thicken, whispering of dangers yet to break. Jack tossed fitfully in his bunk that night, the sea whisper rocking gently against the dock like a cradle built for giants. The harbor's nocturnal symphony, creaking ropes, distant buoy bells, the occasional bark of a sea lion, usually lulled him to sleep. But not tonight. His mind churned with Elena's words, the tracker's faint red light blinking in his memory like a warning beacon. Who would implant something so invasive in a wild animal? And why this calf, so far from the deeper channels where pods roamed free? By dawn, the sky was a bruised purple, the first hints of light filtering through the cabin porthole. Jack brewed a pot of coffee on the propane stove, the bitter aroma cutting through the damp air. He stepped out onto the deck in his oilskins, the chill wind off the bay nipping at his exposed neck. The Dolphin was still there, curled in the shadowed water beneath the hull, its breath steady but shallow. It stirred at his footsteps, lifting its head to whistle softly, a sound that tugged at something raw inside him. Elena arrived just as the sun crested the hills, her truck crunching over the gravel lot. She carried a black duffel bag stuffed with equipment, her face set in determination. "Morning, Jack. Sleep any?" He shook his head, handing her a mug of coffee. "Like a rock in a storm. Calf okay?" She nodded, peering over the side. "Vitals stable. But we need to get that tracker out. Surgery's risky in the field, but waiting could mean whoever planted it shows up." They worked quickly, enlisting Carla and a vet from the center named Tom Riley, a lanky guy with a gentle drawl from Texas who'd traded oil rigs for ocean rescues. The team lowered a sling into the water, coaxing the calf into it with gentle coaxing and a trail of mackerel. It resisted at first, flipping and splashing in protest, but Jack's voice, low and reassuring, the same tone he'd used decades ago to calm spooked horses on his grandfather's ranch, seemed to settle it. "Easy, girl. We're fixing you up." Hauled onto a padded platform lashed to the deck, the Dolphin lay still under the sedative's haze, its eye half-lidded but watchful. Tom worked with steady hands, ultrasound wand gliding over the dorsal fin to pinpoint the device. "Embedded deep," he muttered, sweat beading on his brow despite the cool air. "Looks like it was done under anesthesia. Clean incision, no infection." Elena monitored the vitals on a portable screen, her fingers flying over the keys. Jack stood back, arms crossed, feeling like an intruder in this intimate procedure. The harbor was waking up around them, fishermen prepping lines, a delivery truck beeping at the bait shop, the first tour groups milling about with maps in hand. The extraction took an hour, the tracker emerging as a slim silver capsule, no bigger than an AA battery, coated in a biocompatible sheath. Tom held it up to the light, turning it over. GPS chip, all right, and a data logger, temperature, depth, even audio recordings. Elena's eyes widened. Audio? They were eavesdropping on the pod? She plugged it into a laptop, the screen flickering to life with encrypted files. Jack leaned in, the scent of antiseptic mingling with the sea's brine. "Can you crack it?" Before she could answer, a low rumble echoed from the water, a speedboat slicing through the bay at twice the posted limit. It veered close, too close, the wake slapping against the Sea Whisper's hull and rocking the platform. The calf stirred uneasily, a weak click escaping its blowhole. Jack spun, shielding his eyes against the glare. Two men in mirrored sunglasses and windbreakers idled the engine, their faces blank masks. "Everything all right here?" The driver called, his accent clipped. "Not local. Maybe Eastern European." Carla stepped forward, her stance wide and authoritative. "Marine Center operation. Nothing to see. Move along." The men exchanged a glance, the passenger's hand drifting to his pocket before he nodded curtly. They gunned the throttle and peeled away toward the outer buoys, leaving a churn of white foam. Jack's jaw tightened. "Friends of yours?" Elena shook her head, unplugging the tracker hastily. "Could be. Poachers scout like that. Check for threats." The surgery wrapped without complications, the calf stitched and lowered back into the water, where it swam lazy circles, testing its fin. Jack watched, a mix of relief and dread coiling in his gut. He'd pulled his share of hooks from fish over the years, but this was different. Deliberate harm, hidden motives. As the team packed up, Elena pulled the tracker data onto a secure drive. First files are positional, shows the pod migrating from Baja up the coast. But the audio, it's fragmented. Clicks, whistles, and then human voices, arguing about quotas, payments. Jack rubbed his stubbled chin, the pieces slotting into place like a net's knots. Black market dolphin trade, for shows or worse? Elena's expression darkened. Aquariums pay top dollar for trained calves, or labs. Pharma testing on echolocation. Monterey's clean on paper, but the sanctuary borders unregulated zones. Smugglers use the fog banks to slip in. By noon, the wharf was alive with the day's rhythm. Gulls wheeling overhead. The sizzle of clam chowder from nearby stands. Vendors hawking fresh crab. But Jack felt the shift. The harbor's pulse quickening with unspoken tension. He joined Carla in her office, a cramped trailer overlooking the slips, maps of the bay pinned to the walls like battle plans. "Those boat guys? Run the plates?" She tapped her computer, pulling up a database. "Stolen registration? Out of San Diego. Feds are on alert now. No AA's sending an agent." As they talked, Jack's phone buzzed, a text from Ramirez at the bait shop. "Heard about the Dolphin. Watch your back. Saw similar last season off Carmel. Vanished pods." Jack's fingers tightened around the device. He'd fished those waters, knew the coves where currents hid debris and deals. Memories surfaced, a night years back, anchoring alone, lights flickering on a distant vessel that never hailed. He'd chalked it up to night fishing, but now... Elena returned with printouts, her voice urgent. Decoded more, the trackers transmitting to a satellite relay. Last ping was 2 days ago, from a warehouse district in Moss Landing just south of here. Moss Landing, industrial sprawl. Power plant smokestacks belching against the skyline, a hub for shipping that masked quieter cargoes. Jack's mind raced. "We going?" She hesitated, glancing at Carla, who nodded grimly. Discreetly, can't tip them off. They set out in Elena's unmarked SUV that afternoon, the calf left under Tom's watch with a netted enclosure. The drive hugged the coast, Highway 1 winding through cliffs dotted with cypress trees bent by the wind. Jack stared out at the endless blue, the ocean that had been his livelihood now a suspect. They pulled into Moss Landing under the guise of a supply run, parking near the harbor where trawlers unloaded crates under the watchful eyes of customs agents. But Elena led them to a side road, past rusting silos to a nondescript building with chain-link fencing and a no trespassing sign flapping in the breeze. From the tree line they watched, a forklift humming, men in coveralls shifting pallets stamped with generic seafood labels. One crate slipped, revealing a glimpse of insulated foam, the kind used for live transport. Jack's breath caught. That's it. Elena snapped photos with a telephoto lens, her hands steady. But as dusk fell, headlights swept the lot, a black SUV pulling up, disgorging 3 figures in suits. One barked orders in a language Jack didn't recognize, gesturing sharply. They retreated before being spotted, hearts pounding as they merged back onto the highway. "Evidence," Elena said, clutching the camera. "Enough to warrant a search." Jack nodded, but unease gnawed at him. The calf's eyes haunted him, intelligent and trusting. Back at the harbor, night had deepened, stars pricking the velvet sky. The Dolphin greeted their return with a leap, as if sensing the storm brewing. Jack knelt by the water, his reflection rippling beside the calf's. The truth was closing in, layer by layer, and he was no longer just a fisherman. He was part of it now, whether he wanted to be or not. The waves whispered promises of confrontation, the harbor holding its breath in the gathering dark. The days blurred into a tense rhythm at the harbor, the Sea Whisper moored like a sentinel amid the growing scrutiny. Jack found himself drawn back to the boat each morning, the Dolphin's presence a constant pull, its soft clicks a language he was starting to decipher in fragments. Gratitude, perhaps, or lingering fear. The calf had been named Luna by the center's volunteers, a nod to the way her pale underbelly caught the moonlight. But to Jack, she was just the kid, a scrappy survivor mirroring his own solitary grit. He fed her by hand now, slicing mackerel from the market and watching her snatch them mid-air, her movements gaining strength after the surgery. Yet the tracker's shadow loomed, its data files dissected in late-night sessions at Elena's makeshift lab in the aquarium's back offices. Elena had looped in more allies by the third day, a no-AA investigator named Marcus Hale, a sharp-eyed federal agent with a buzz cut and a badge that carried weight from D.C. to the coast. He arrived in a nondescript sedan, parking away from the wharf's bustle to avoid drawing eyes. Over lukewarm coffee in Carla's trailer, Marcus spread satellite maps across the cluttered table, red pins marking the tracker's pings. "This is an amateur hour," he said. His voice a low rumble honed from years of busting smuggling rings. The relay bounces through offshore servers, likely tied to a syndicate operating out of Ensenada. Dolphins like this, prime for the pet trade in the Gulf, or worse, black market research in Asia. That audio you pulled, mentions of specimens and delivery windows. Jack leaned against the wall, arms folded, the scent of diesel and printer ink thick in the air. He'd never dealt with feds before. His world was nets and knots, not international intrigue. But Luna's trusting nudge against the boat that morning had sealed it. He couldn't walk away. Warehouse in Moss Landing. Saw the crates myself. What now? Marcus tapped a pin near the power plant. Surveillance first. We don't raid without probable cause. But if they move that pod, or whatever's left of it, we're too late. The investigation pulled Jack deeper, away from his routine hauls. He skipped a charter gig, citing boat trouble, and instead shadowed Elena on stakeouts along the dunes south of Monterey. They parked her SUV in the scrub, binoculars trained on the warehouse from afar. The facility hummed with activity, trucks rumbling in at odd hours, floodlights cutting the fog like knives. One evening, as the sun bled orange into the Pacific, they spotted a familiar speedboat docking at a private slip. The same one from the harbor, its hull scarred from rough use. Two men unloaded gear, tanks, nets, and what looked like sedated crates emitting faint thumps. "Evidence piling up," Elena whispered, her camera clicking silently. Jack's pulse thrummed. He gripped the door handle, instincts screaming to charge in. But Marcus's protocol held them back. Photos, plates, timestamps. Back at the wharf, the weight settled heavier. Luna sensed it, her leaps more frantic that night, as if echoing his unease. Jack sat on the dock's edge, feet dangling in the cool water, and talked to her like an old friend. "Hang in there, kid. We're getting to the bottom of this." Her response was a gentle bump against his boot, the contact grounding him amid the chaos. Word leaked, as it always did in tight-knit Monterey. By week's end, the local paper ran a vague piece on unusual marine activity, sparking calls to the center. Carla fielded them from her office, her frustration mounting as tips mixed with crank calls. One stood out, an anonymous voicemail from a deckhand at Moss Landing, voice muffled by static. "They're planning a run tonight. Big load. Watch the channel markers off Elkhorn Slough." Marcus verified it through back channels, his face hardening. "Could be a setup, but we can't ignore it. Jack, you know these waters. Guide us out." The operation launched under cover of darkness, the team assembling on a borrowed patrol vessel from the harbor master's fleet. Jack helmed the bridge, the engines purring low as they slipped past the breakwater. Elena and Tom monitored sonar from the cabin, while Marcus coordinated with Coast Guard choppers via radio. The night air was thick with salt and anticipation, stars wheeling overhead like distant spotlights. Luna had been secured in a floating pen at the wharf, her protests fading as the boat pulled away. A small mercy, Jack thought, sparing her the danger. They motored south, hugging the coastline where Highway 1's lights faded into blackness. Elkhorn Slough's marshy fringes loomed, a labyrinth of channels teeming with otters and birds by day, but eerie in the gloom. Jack cut the engines at the markers, drifting on the current, night vision goggles painting the world in green hues. Minutes ticked by, the only sound the slap of waves and distant foghorn, then a low growl, engines, multiple, approaching from the Slough's depths. Two vessels emerged like ghosts. A larger trawler, low-slung and laden, flanked by the speedboat. Spotlights swept the water, but the patrol stayed dark, shadows among shadows. Marcus whispered orders, and they closed in slow, flanking the suspects. "Coast Guard, cut engines!" A bullhorn blared from above, the chopper's rotors thumping like thunder. Chaos erupted. The trawler gunned forward, crates shifting on deck, while the speedboat veered wildly, a figure firing warning shots into the air. Jack's hands flew over the controls, pursuing the smaller craft as it darted toward open water. Bullets pinged off the hull, adrenaline surging through him like fire. "Hold steady!" Marcus yelled, returning fire with precise bursts. The speedboat swerved into a sandbar, grinding to a halt in shallow surf. The team boarded fast, zip-tying the men. The same pair from before, faces twisted in defiance. "You got nothing," the driver spat, his accent thick, but the evidence spoke. Hidden compartments yielding sedatives, tracking devices, and logbooks detailing acquisitions from Baja pods. The trawler fared worse, cornered by the chopper's glare. Divers, Elena among them, breached the hole to find holding tanks. Murky water sloshing with 3 more bottlenose calves, emaciated and scarred, their mothers nowhere in sight. Gasps echoed over comms as the team freed them, pumping oxygen into the tanks. Jack, back on the patrol boat, felt a hollow victory. Luna's pod, or part of it, reduced to cargo. The feds hauled the catch to the wharf by dawn, the calves transferred to the center under strobe lights and flashing cameras. As the sun rose, painting the bay in soft pinks, Jack reunited with Luna. She breached high, a joyous arc that sprayed him head to toe, her clicks triumphant. Elena joined him, exhausted but elated, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "You saved them, Jack. All of them." But his smile was tight. The men's confessions trickled in during debriefs. A ring spanning Mexico to California, driven by demand for exotic pets and unethical labs. Quotas met with tranquilizer darts and mid-sea captures, pods shattered for profit. The harbor exhaled, returning to its cadence. Fishermen casting lines, tourists milling with ice cream cones, the wharf's bells tolling the hour. Yet Jack changed. He volunteered at the center now, teaching kids about the sanctuary's fragility over chowder lunches. Luna stayed close, her recovery swift, but the scars, visible and not, lingered. One evening, as he mended nets on the Sea Whisper's deck, she nudged a small, smooth stone to the surface, dropping it at his feet like a gift. He pocketed it, a talisman of the bond forged in crisis. Marcus stopped by later, clapping Jack on the back. "Case building. Trials in months, but we hit them hard." Jack nodded, gazing at the horizon where the ocean stretched infinite and unforgiving. The truth beneath the waves had surfaced, raw and revealing, forcing him to confront not just poachers, but his own isolation. The sea had given him a companion, however fleeting, and in her eyes, he saw the wild's resilience, a mirror to his own. As twilight deepened, Luna's silhouette danced in the swells, a promise that some battles once joined changed a man forever. The weeks following the bust settled over Monterey like a heavy fog, thick and unrelenting, mirroring the unease that had taken root in Jack's chest. The harbor, once a sanctuary of routine, now buzzed with the aftermath. Federal agents combing through manifests at the wharf, reporters lingering like gulls after scraps, and the faint, acrid scent of bureaucracy mingling with the usual brine. Jack kept to the Sea Whisper, polishing brass fittings and checking lines with a mechanical focus, but his eyes often drifted to the floating pen where Luna recuperated. The calf had gained weight, her flanks filling out with the steady diet of sardines and supplements from the center, but she still favored her left side, a subtle limp in her swim that spoke of deeper wounds. Elena had become a fixture in his days, stopping by with updates on the investigation, her optimism tempered by the grind of paperwork. "The ring's unraveling," she told him one crisp morning as they stood on the dock, steam rising from their mugs. The bay sparkled under a rare clear sky, seals barking from the rocks at Pacific Grove. Marcus traced the satellite relay to a shell company in Tijuana, front for exotic animal exports. "Those calves we freed. They're en route to a rehab facility up north, but Luna, she's bonded to you. Releasing her now might stress her out." Jack grunted, tossing a fish into the pen. Luna snatched it with a snap, her dark eyes locking onto his through the net. "She's wild. Can't keep her like a pet." But the words felt hollow. The Dolphin's insistence had woven into his solitude, filling the quiet hours with purpose. He'd started sketching maps of his own, old fishing spots off Point Sur where he'd seen odd boat traffic years back, details he'd buried under decades of indifference. Handing them to Marcus felt like confessing a long-held secret, the agent's nod of approval, a quiet validation. That afternoon, trouble stirred in the form of a summons. Carla called him into her trailer, the space cluttered with file boxes and a half-eaten sandwich wilting on her desk. "Feds want your statement on record. And Jack, those men from the speedboat, they're talking. Say the operation ran deeper than we thought. Involved locals." Her eyes flicked to the window where Ramirez's bait shop glowed under the sun. Jack's jaw tightened. Locals? The harbor was family, bound by shared storms and lean seasons. Betrayal cut sharper than any hook. The interview dragged in a sterile conference room at the aquarium, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Marcus sat across from him, flanked by a stenographer tapping away. "Walk us through the warehouse sighting," the agent prompted, his pen poised. Jack recounted the crates, the speedboat, the suited figures barking in the dusk, every detail etched from adrenaline-fueled memory. But as he spoke, doubt crept in. Had he seen a face he knew? A silhouette like old Harlan? A cousin who'd drifted into charter work down south? The thought gnawed, but he pushed it down, focusing on Luna's rescue instead. By evening, the weight lifted slightly as he returned to the boat. The sun dipped low, painting the water in fiery strokes, and Luna breached in greeting, her tail slapping the surface with renewed vigor. Jack knelt at the pen's edge, trailing his fingers in the cool flow. "Missed you today, kid." Her clicks came rapid, almost conversational, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them. The lap of waves, the distant cry of gulls. But peace shattered with the crunch of tires on gravel. A black sedan pulled up, not Marcus's usual ride. Out stepped a man in a crisp suit, tie loosened, his face lined with the weariness of long flights. "Mr. Harlan?" The stranger extended a hand, his grip firm. "Dr. Victor Lang, from the International Marine Conservation League. Heard about your dolphin. Mind if we talk?" Jack eyed him warily. The name unfamiliar, but the credentials, flashed in a leather wallet, legit. They settled on upturned crates by the water, the evening chill settling as Victor pulled a tablet from his briefcase. "Luna's case isn't isolated. We've tracked similar implants in pods from Baja to here. Not just poachers, corporate. Pharma companies testing sonar disruptors for offshore drilling. Disorients the animals, makes capture easy." Jack's blood ran cold. Drilling? Monterey's sanctuary was a buffer against that. Fought tooth and nail by locals since the 90s oil spills scarred the coast. Proof? Victor swiped the screen, revealing grainy footage, a research vessel in Mexican waters, divers tagging dolphins under floodlights, the animals thrashing in harnesses. Leaked from an insider. Your tracker's serial matches their batch. The bust disrupted a shipment, but the source is still active. They might come for Luna, to silence loose ends. The warning hung like smoke. Jack glanced at the pen, Luna floating serenely, oblivious. That night sleep evaded him again, the cabin's shadows twisting into threats. He bolted the hatches early, a shotgun from his grandfather's era propped by the bunk, more comfort than intent. Dawn brought Elena with news, another ping on a similar tracker, faint, from the slough. Could be a survivor from the pod. They mobilized quickly, Jack helming a center skiff with Tom, the engines thrum a steady pulse against the rising mist. The slough twisted like veins through the salt marshes, egrets startling from reeds as they motored deeper. Sonar pinged sporadically, ghosts in the murk, until a shape resolved. Another calf, smaller than Luna, tangled in drift kelp near a mudflat. It was emaciated, ribs stark under gray skin, a fresh wound on its fluke oozing. "Easy," Tom murmured, slipping into the shallows with a net. Jack held the boat steady, heart pounding as the young Dolphin clicked weakly, echoing Luna's first calls. They freed it gently, wrapping it in wet towels for the short haul back. At the center, vets swarmed, IVs dripping antibiotics into the fragile body. Elena examined the new arrival, dubbed Sul for his golden-tinged beak, and found another implant, dormant but intact. "They're breeding them marked," she said, voice laced with fury. Jack paced the observation deck, watching through glass as Sul stabilized. Victor's words echoed, corporate hands pulling strings. A quick search on his phone pulled up headlines. Drilling permits fast-tracked off the coast. Environmental suits buried in lobbying cash. Monterey's fight wasn't over. It had just gone underwater. Word reached Carla by noon, her face thunderous as she coordinated with Marcus. "This ties back to the warehouse. Those suits you saw. Execs from an energy firm, laundering through the pet trade." Jack felt the noose tightening. He'd fished these waters blind to the undercurrents, but now they dragged him in. That evening, as he checked on Luna, Sul was floated nearby in a connecting pen. The two dolphins touched noses through the barrier, a reunion silent but profound, clicks building to a chorus that vibrated the air. Jack sat with Elena under the stars, the aquarium's lights casting halos on the water. What now? Hide them? She shook her head, determination etching her features. "Expose it. Victor's got contacts in D.C., but we need more. Witnesses, data." As the night deepened, a distant engine rumbled, cutting through the calm. Headlights swept the access road, slowing near the pens. Jack tensed, hand drifting to his pocket knife. The vehicle idled, then accelerated away, leaving only exhaust in its wake. A warning or reconnaissance. The truth coiled tighter, pulling the harbor into its depths, and Jack knew the shocks were far from over. Luna's watchful gaze met his, a silent pact in the dark. The fog rolled in thick that night, blanketing the Monterey harbor in a shroud that muffled the usual clamor of creaking docks and lapping waves. Jack Harlan paced the length of the Sea Whisper's deck, the wooden planks slick under his boots from the condensing mist. His breath came in visible puffs, the chill seeping through his flannel shirt despite the layers. Luna's pen bobbed gently nearby, her silhouette a faint gray hump against the inky water, while Sol's enclosure hummed with the soft whir of aerators keeping the smaller calf oxygenated. The two dolphins had settled into an uneasy truce, their occasional clicks piercing the quiet like Morse code, a language Jack wished he could fully unravel. He'd barely closed his eyes when Elena's truck headlights cut through the haze around 2 a.m., tires crunching over the wet gravel. She jumped out, her ponytail disheveled, clutching a folder thick with printouts. "Jack, you up? Victor just called. Got a breakthrough." Her voice was hushed but urgent, eyes darting to the shadows along the wharf where sodium lamps cast elongated pools of yellow. Jack nodded, rubbing sleep from his face, and they ducked into the cabin, the propane lantern flickering to life on the table cluttered with nautical charts and empty coffee mugs. Elena spread the documents, her fingers trembling slightly from the cold or adrenaline. He couldn't tell. The serial on Sol's tracker matches a batch shipped to a subsidiary of Petroglobal, that drilling conglomerate pushing for leases off Big Sur. They're not just poaching for pets, it's cover for field tests. The implants disrupt echolocation, emit low-frequency pulses that confuse pods, herding them into capture zones. Luna's group must have been a test run, calves tagged to monitor effects. She tapped a grainy photo, a sleek research vessel anchored in Baja's shallows. Divers in black neoprene deploying buoys that hummed with hidden tech. Jack's stomach nodded, the lantern's glow highlighting the lines etched deep around his eyes. Petroglobal, He'd seen their ads on TV, glossy promises of clean energy while locals fought permit expansions in town halls packed with protest signs. So the bust was just the tip. They're still out there, zapping dolphins to clear the way for rigs. Elena nodded, her expression a mix of fury and exhaustion. Victor's insider confirmed it. The warehouse was a drop point for the trackers, disguised as seafood shipments. But get this, the audio from Luna's device has timestamps syncing with seismic surveys last month. They were mapping migration paths to avoid or exploit. The words hung heavy, turning the cabin into a confessional. Jack thought of his own hauls, the way pods had thinned over the years, chalked up to overfishing or El Niño shifts. Now it felt like betrayal, the ocean he'd trusted poisoned by boardroom greed. What about the locals they mentioned? Anyone we know? Elena hesitated, flipping to a highlighted page. One name popped, Ricky Harlan. Your cousin, right? Worked charters out of Carmel before going quiet. Jack's face hardened, a flush creeping up his neck. Ricky, the hothead who'd borrowed money once too often, vanishing into vague tales of better gigs down the coast. Family ties, frayed but real, now suspect. Dawn broke gray and sodden, the fog lifting just enough to reveal the harbor's skeletal masts piercing the skyline. Jack couldn't shake the revelation. He skipped breakfast, heading straight to the pens with a bucket of herring. Luna surfaced first, her beak nudging the net insistently, while Sewell hung back, still wary of humans after his ordeal. Jack murmured reassurances, his voice rough from lack of sleep, as he portioned out the fish. Your family's out there fighting the same ghosts, huh? The dolphins responded in tandem, a duet of whistles that echoed off the pilings, drawing curious glances from early rising deckhands unloading ice at the wharf. Carla Ruiz arrived mid-morning, her pickup kicking up gravel as she parked. She was flanked by Marcus Hale, the NOAA agent looking sharper in a fresh suit, and Victor Lang, who carried a laptop under one arm like a shield. They gathered in Carla's trailer, the air thick with the scent of stale donuts and printer toner. We've got probable cause now, Marcus announced, pinning a photo of the research vessel to the wall map. Linking the trackers to PetroGlobal's R&D logs, leaked via Victor's network. But we need boots on the ground. Jack, Elena, you two scouted Moss Landing, willing to go deeper. Jack met Elena's gaze across the table. Her nod was firm, a spark of resolve in her tired eyes. Warehouse again, or the vessel? Victor leaned forward, his international accent clipping the words. Both. Intel says the ship's due in Ensenada tomorrow, but they're prepping gear here. Test buoys, more implants. A raid could shut it down before they relocate. Carla crossed her arms, her harbormaster badge glinting. Feds handle the warrants, but this harbor's my watch. No slip-ups, or it'll scare off every legit fisherman. The plan coalesced over the next hours. Surveillance at the warehouse under cover of a routine inspection, coordinated with Mexican authorities for the ship. Jack felt the pull of it, a current stronger than any tide, dragging him from observer to player. By noon, he and Elena were en route south in her SUV, the coastal highway unfurling like a ribbon through eucalyptus groves and sheer drops to the sea. Silence stretched between them at first, broken only by the radio's crackle of updates. You ever think it'd come to this? Elena asked, her hands tight on the wheel as they passed the power plant's looming stacks in Moss Landing. Jack stared at the passing dunes, where pelicans wheeled against the overcast sky. Thought the biggest threat was quotas or storms, not suits and towers screwing with the food chain. She glanced at him, a small smile softening her features. You're doing good, Jack. Luna trusts you. That's something. The words warmed him unexpectedly, a crack in his armored solitude. They arrived at the warehouse district as shifts changed, blending into the flow of workers in hard hats and vests. Posing as environmental consultants, clipboards in hand, they skirted the perimeter fence, peering through chain link at the loading bays. Forklifts buzzed, pallets stacked high with what looked like buoys and sensor arrays, innocuous to the untrained eye. But Elena's trained gaze caught the details. Serial numbers matching the trackers, crates labeled acoustic research, with PetroGlobal stickers peeking from beneath. She snapped photos discreetly, her phone's shutter silent in vibrate mode. Then a familiar voice cut through the din, gruff, laced with a coastal drawl. Jack froze behind a rusted dumpster, peering out. There, directing a crew, was Ricky, older, heavier, his once boyish face weathered by sun and secrets, a company polo stretched over his gut. He barked orders, oblivious to the shadows, but Jack's blood ran hot. Cousin or not, the sight twisted like a knife. Family complicit in the chaos that had scarred Luna and Saul. They slipped away undetected, hearts racing as they merged onto the highway north. Elena's call to Marcus confirmed the visuals. Warrants accelerated. Back at the harbor by dusk, the pens glowed under security lights, Luna and Saul surfacing in unison as if sensing the storm. Jack lingered by the water, the day's weight pressing down, the fog returning to swallow the lights one by one. Revelations piled like driftwood, each wave uncovering more rot beneath the surface. He whispered to the dolphins, a vow unspoken. This ends now. The night deepened, the bay's whispers turning to warnings, as the harbor braced for the confrontation ahead. The raid on the Moss Landing warehouse unfolded under a slate-gray sky the next morning, the kind of overcast that pressed down on the coastal flats like a held breath. Jack Harlan rode in the back of Marcus Hale's unmarked van, the air inside thick with the hum of radios and the faint tang of gun oil from the federal team's gear. Elena Vasquez sat beside him, her knee bouncing subtly, fingers laced tight around a thermos of coffee gone cold. Victor Lang had flown out at dawn to coordinate with Mexican counterparts, leaving the ground operation to the locals and feds. Jack's stomach churned, not from seasickness, but from the knot of betrayal lodged there since spotting Ricky the day before. Family, he'd always thought, was thicker than the saltiest brine, but greed had a way of corroding even that. They parked a quarter-mile out, beyond the chain-link perimeter where diesel fumes hung heavy and the distant clang of metal on metal echoed like a factory heartbeat. Marcus, in tactical vest and earpiece, briefed the team in clipped tones. 10 agents, 2 from Noe, blending with a harbor patrol detail to keep it low-key. In and out, he said, eyes scanning the group. Seize the equipment, any personnel on site. No heroics. Petroglobal's lawyers are sharks. Jack nodded, his own flannel shirt tucked into jeans, a center-issued vest, the only armor he wore. He wasn't law enforcement, but his knowledge of the backlots, from years hauling crab pots through the industrial sprawl, made him indispensable. They moved in at 10 a.m. sharp, the van's doors sliding open with a whisper. Jack flanked Elena as they approached the main gate, posing as inspectors with forged badges clipped to their collars. The guard, a burly guy with a clipboard and a squint, waved them through after a cursory glance, too busy logging a truck's departure to question the extra muscle trailing behind. Inside, the warehouse loomed like a concrete beast, roll-up doors yawning open to reveal pallets of buoys stacked like dominoes, their surfaces etched with serial numbers that matched the trackers pulled from Luna and Saul. Forklifts whined, workers in coveralls shifting crates stamped Marine Acoustics Research. But Jack caught the glint of hidden compartments, foam-lined, perfect for smuggling live cargo or tech. Ricky was there, center stage, barking at a crew loading a flatbed. His back was to them, broad shoulders straining his polo as he gestured at a diagram pinned to a clipboard. Jack's pulse thundered in his ears, the face so familiar from boyhood summers chasing waves at Carmel Beach, now twisted by years of choices Jack could only guess at. Elena squeezed his arm, a silent anchor, as Marcus gave the signal. Agents fanned out, badges flashing, voices overlapping in a chorus of authority. Federal operation! Hands where we can see them! Chaos ignited like a flare. Workers scattered, some diving behind pallets, others freezing with tools in hand. Ricky spun, his eyes widening in shock that melted into recognition when they locked on Jack. "Cuz? What the hell?" But Marcus was on him in seconds, twisting his arms behind his back, cuffs clicking shut. "Ronald Harlan, you're under arrest for conspiracy in wildlife trafficking and environmental sabotage." Ricky's face contorted a mix of defiance and desperation. "This ain't what you think, Jack. It's just gear, research, legit stuff." Jack held back, fists clenched at his sides as agents tore into the crates. What spilled out chilled the air. Not just buoys, but prototype emitters. Sleek devices pulsing with low-frequency signals designed to jam Dolphin echolocation. Herding pods like sheep to slaughter. Vials of sedatives labeled for marine containment. Logbooks detailing test sites off the sanctuary's edge, and a laptop open to encrypted emails from Petro Global execs. Quotas cold as ledgers. Acquire 5 juveniles for behavioral study. Disrupt migration if necessary. Elena knelt by one emitter, her face ashen, gloved hands tracing the wiring. This is it. The pulses. They've been running trials for months. Luna's pod. They were guinea pigs. Ricky struggled against the agents, his voice rising over the din. Jack, listen. They paid good. Better than scraping by on quotas. Your life's the same grind, ain't it? Boat barely afloat, no one left. This was survival. The words landed like hooks, snagging old wounds. The empty apartment. The wife who'd sailed away. The solitude Jack had armored himself with. But seeing Ricky's eyes, hollow, justifying the scars on those calves, snapped something. Survival? You scarred kids for a paycheck. Luna trusted me 'cause I ain't like that. He turned away, the warehouse blurring as agents hauled Ricky toward the exit, his protests fading into the clamor of zip-tied workers and bagged evidence. Outside, the flatbed truck peeled out in a spray of gravel, but a patrol boat cut it off at the dock, boarding swift and sure. Marcus clapped Jack on the shoulder as they loaded gear into vans. Solid work. This ties Petro Global direct. No more shells. Elena joined them, folder of photos in hand. Her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The data's gold. Seismic logs match the audio from Luna's tracker. We can bury their drilling push with this. But Jack's mind lingered on Ricky, now slumped in the back of a squad car, head bowed. Family fractured, the harbor's tight weave unraveling thread by thread. By afternoon, the team debriefed at the wharf, the seized equipment under guard in Carla's secure shed. Jack wandered to the pens, the sun breaking through clouds to gild the water gold. Luna and Saul surfaced together, their beaks breaking the surface in tandem, clicks cascading like applause. He knelt, trailing a hand near the net, feeling the vibration of their song through the mesh. Got your backs, kids, he murmured, the weight of the day easing just a fraction. Elena found him there, sitting cross-legged on the dock, her shadow falling long across the planks. You okay? She asked, settling beside him. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the scent of kelp and distant rain. Jack shrugged, gaze fixed on the horizon where the sanctuary's waters met the open sea. Ricky, he wasn't wrong about the grind. But this? It's bigger than us. Feels like the ocean's fighting back through them. She nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder, a quiet solidarity born of shared shocks. It is, and we're part of it now. Word spread fast. The local news chopper buzzed overhead by dusk, capturing the vans departing Moss Landing, while Carla fielded calls from higher-ups, her voice a bulwark against the storm. Victor texted from Ensenada. The research vessel intercepted at sea, crew in custody, holds full of more emitters destined for the Gulf. But as night fell, a new shadow loomed. Jack's phone buzzed with an unknown number, a garbled voicemail, accent thick, warning of consequences for meddlers. He deleted it, but sleep came fitful, the sea whisper rocking under stars that seemed too watchful. The next day brought interrogations, Ricky's spilling details in a federal holding room down the coast, how Petro Global recruited desperate locals, promising clean jobs that dirtied souls, testing tech to manage marine traffic for rigs. Confessions piled like evidence crates, but Jack skipped the session, choosing instead to help Tom with Soul's rehab, guiding the smaller calf through gentle swims, his presence a steadying force. Luna watched from her pen, her leaps more confident, as if the victories rippled through her. Yet the shocks deepened. Elena uncovered emails in the laptop's cache, plans for a larger op, targeting the sanctuary's core kelp forests with disguised buoys. Petro Global wasn't stopping. The bust had just poked the beast. Jack felt the pull stronger, the truth a current dragging him toward uncharted depths. As the sun set, painting the bay in bruised purples, he stood with Elena at the water's edge, the Dolphin silhouettes dancing below. The harbor held its breath, the waves murmuring of battles yet to crest, and Jack knew the revelations were only beginning to break the surface. The tension in Monterey Bay thickened like the morning fog that clung to the docks, refusing to burn off even as the sun climbed higher. Jack Harlan woke to the insistent trill of his phone, the screen glowing with Marcus Hale's number in the dim cabin of the Sea Whisper. He fumbled for it, the wooden floor cold against his bare feet, the scent of damp salt and yesterday's coffee lingering in the air. "Harlan." Marcus's voice crackled through, edged with the gravel of too many late nights. "Ricky's talking more. You need to hear this. Meet at the center in an hour." Jack dressed quickly, pulling on his worn jeans and a hoodie zipped against the chill, his mind already churning. Luna and Saul's pens floated serene in the harbor's glassy calm, the two calves circling each other with renewed energy, their gray forms slicing through the water like shadows come alive. He paused at the railing, tossing a handful of minnows into Luna's enclosure. She breached immediately, snatching one midair with a snap that sent droplets arcing toward him. Her clicks a morning greeting that eased the knot in his chest just a fraction. "Be back soon, kid," he murmured, the words more vow than promise. The drive to the Marine Mammal Center wound through Pacific Grove's winding streets, past quaint cottages with flower boxes overflowing in the coastal breeze and the distant bark of sea lions from the rocks. Elena was already there when he arrived, waiting in the lobby with a styrofoam cup of tea steaming in her hands, her eyes shadowed but sharp. "Rough night?" she asked, falling into step beside him as they headed to the conference room. Jack shrugged, the weight of the voicemail from the night before pressing like an anchor. "Dreamed of rigs blotting the horizon. Woke up tasting oil." She touched his arm briefly, a gesture that lingered warmer than the fog outside. Marcus paced the room, a whiteboard behind him scrawled with timelines and company names, red marker bleeding into the edges. Ricky sat cuffed to a chair at the table, his face gaunt under the fluorescent lights, the fight drained from him like water from a punctured hull. He looked up as Jack entered, his eyes, once so like their grandfather's, full of mischief, now dulled by regret. "Jack, I didn't mean for it to go this far." The words hung, raw and unpolished, the accent of their shared youth threading through. "Sit," Marcus said, gesturing Jack to a chair opposite his cousin. Elena took notes on a tablet, her pen tapping a steady rhythm. Ricky leaned forward, chains rattling softly. "Petro Global. They approached me 2 years back. Said it was environmental monitoring, buoys to track currents for safer drilling. Paid cash up front, no questions. But then the trackers came, implants for data collection. I loaded crates, that's all. Didn't know about the pulses till last season when a pod washed up disoriented off Carmel. Sick, thrashing, like Luna's bunch." Jack's hands clenched under the table, knuckles whitening. "You saw it and kept going? For what? A new truck? A boat?" Ricky's gaze dropped to the linoleum floor, scuffed from years of boot traffic. "Debts, Jack. After Maria left, the charters dried up. They promised it was controlled, that the Dolphins bounced back. But the execs, they're ruthless. One name keeps coming up, Harlan Voss. Not family, but he runs the coastal ops. Ex-oil roughneck, now their fixer. He greenlit the tests, said the sanctuary was expendable collateral for the leases." The room fell silent, save for the hum of the AC and Elena's pen scratching faster. Marcus nodded, flipping open a folder thick with photos. Voss, a bull of a man with a scarred jaw and eyes like chipped flint, shaking hands with suited board members at a San Francisco gala. Voss is the link. Ricky's logs place him at the warehouse multiple times. And get this, the voicemail you got, traced to a burner, but the tower pings near his safe house in Seaside. Jack's pulse quickened, the harbor's edges feeling smaller, closing in. Elena broke the quiet, her voice steady. "The calves, Luna and Saul. If Voss knows about the raid, he might target the center. Those implants weren't just trackers, they're prototypes. Destroying them silences the evidence." Marcus rubbed his jaw, glancing at the window where the bay's expanse mocked their confinement. We're moving on Voss today. Safe house raid at dusk. Jack, you in? Your eyes on the water could spot any escape routes. Jack met Ricky's gaze one last time, seeing not the cousin who'd taught him to tie knots as a boy, but a man broken by the same sea that had shaped them. Yeah, for the pods. Ricky nodded weakly, a ghost of apology in his slump as agents led him away. The door clicked shut, leaving the room echoing with unspoken fractures. The afternoon dragged under a sky heavy with unshed rain. Jack and Elena prepping at the wharf with the team. Carla coordinated from her trailer, radios crackling with updates, while Tom checked the pens, ensuring Luna and Saul's enclosures were reinforced with extra mesh. The calves sensed the undercurrent, their swims more vigilant, breaches higher as if scanning for threats. Jack helped secure the barriers, his hands steady on the ropes. But his mind raced to Voss, the man who'd turned the ocean's chorus into a weapon. As dusk bled purple across the water, the convoy rolled out. 2 unmarked SUVs and a patrol boat idling at the slip. Jack rode with Elena, the highway north blurring into strip malls and eucalyptus stands, the air inside the vehicle thick with anticipation. Seaside's outskirts gave way to a rundown neighborhood of sagging bungalows and chain-link fences. Voss's safe house, a nondescript rancher tucked behind overgrown oleanders. Marcus signaled the breach, agents fanning out like a net closing. They hit fast, doors splintering, shouts echoing through the dim interior. Jack hung back with Elena at the perimeter. Shotgun borrowed from Carla heavy in his grip, heart hammering against his ribs. Inside, chaos. Voss bolted for a back window, but agents tackled him mid-stride, his curses muffled by the scuffle. The house yielded troves, laptops encrypted with drilling schematics, vials of experimental sedatives, and a wall safe crammed with cache and manifest detailing pod disruptions synced to seismic blasts. Voss, zip-tied and snarling on the living room floor amid overturned lamps and scattered papers, locked eyes with Jack through the doorway. Harlan, the fisherman playing hero, you think this stops anything? The rigs are coming, sanctuary or not. His laugh was bitter, edged with the desperation of a cornered shark. Elena photographed the hall, her face a mask of resolve. But Jack felt the tremor in his stance, the man's words a poison seeping into the cracks of victory. By midnight, the team wrapped, Voss in custody, and the safe house sealed. Back at the harbor, the fog had lifted, stars pricking the velvet sky like accusations. Jack found Elena at the pens, her silhouette outlined by the security lights. Luna surfaced silently, her beak brushing the net near Jack's hand, Sewell echoing with a softer click. It's not over, Elena said, voice low. Voss will roll on the execs, but the damage. The pods are scattered, migrations thrown. Jack nodded. The shotgun traded for a thermos of soup from the center's kitchen, shared in quiet sips. He sat on the dock's edge, feet dangling toward the black water, the night's revelations settling like silt. Family betrayed, corporate greed laid bare, the sea's secrets dragged into the light. Luna's presence anchored him, her breaths rhythmic against the hull, a reminder that some bonds endured the storm. But as distant engines hummed on the horizon, perhaps just a late trawler, perhaps more, Jack knew the waves still hid depths untold, the final shocks waiting to crest. The months following the raid on Voss's safe house unfolded like the slow unraveling of a storm-tossed net, threads of justice pulling taut against the relentless tug of the sea. Jack Harlan found himself adrift in a new rhythm at the Monterey harbor. The Sea Whisper, no longer just a vessel for hauling fish, but a quiet hub for the healing that rippled outward from Luna and Saul's pens. The calves had grown stronger under the center's care, their sleek forms cutting through the water with a grace that belied the scars etched into their hides, faint lines from barbs and pulses, reminders of the greed that had nearly claimed them. Luna, ever the bolder of the two, would breach at dawn, her silhouette sharp against the rising sun, while Saul trailed in her wake, his smaller frame gaining confidence in the shared sanctuary of the enclosures. Elena Vasquez's days blurred into a frenzy of reports and testimonies, her small office at the aquarium stacked with binders of evidence, decrypted emails from PetroGlobal's servers, seismic logs correlating with pod disruptions, and Voss's own recorded confessions, spilling like bilge water. The fixer had cracked under federal pressure, naming executives in boardrooms from Houston to Mexico City, their plans to deploy the disruptive emitters across the sanctuary's migratory lanes laid bare in cold detail. It was efficiency, Voss had growled during one interrogation, his scarred jaw twitching under the harsh lights. Clear the noise so the drills could sing. But efficiency, Jack knew, was just a polished word for plunder, the kind that left bays silent and fishermen like him wondering what else the depths had swallowed. Jack avoided the spotlight, preferring the tangible work of mending what he could. He volunteered full-time now, his calloused hands trading hooks for feeding tubes, guiding Luna through behavioral therapy sessions, where she'd follow his gestures with those intelligent eyes, clicking in what felt like approval. The bond had deepened, unspoken but profound. She'd nudge the net when he approached, her rubbery snout cool against his palm, a trust forged in the chaos of that first insistent swim alongside his boat. Sewell, more reserved, watched from the edges, but even he began to circle closer, the duo's reunited chatter filling the air with a tentative harmony that eased the harbor's lingering pall. Ricky's trial loomed like a shadow over family gatherings that no longer happened, his pleas for leniency buried under the weight of the evidence. Jack visited him once in the county lockup, the sterile visiting room divided by plexiglass and regret. "I thought I was saving us, Jack," Ricky said, his voice muffled through the speaker, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights. "The sea's changing. Quotas tighter, fish scarcer. PetroGlobal made it seem like progress." Jack pressed his forehead to the divider, the cool surface grounding him. "Progress don't scar kids for life. You chose wrong, but family's family. I'll speak for you, mitigating whatever they call it. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but a knot retied, frayed edges and all." As he left, the clang of the gate echoed like a final wave crashing, but it carried a measure of release. The broader fight crested in a federal courtroom in San Francisco, the bay's fog seeping through the windows like a witness from the deep. Elena testified for days, her voice steady as she detailed the emitter's pulses, low-frequency barrages that scrambled echolocation, turning pods into disoriented prey. Jack took the stand briefly, his gruff testimony painting the human side. The Dolphin's desperate nudges against his hull, the shadows stirring in the slough, the way Luna's eyes had pleaded for more than survival. "She wouldn't leave 'cause she knew I saw it. The truth under the waves," he said, the words simple but slicing through the room's polished tension. PetroGlobal's lawyers spun webs of prototype errors and regulatory compliance, but the leaked footage Victor Lang had smuggled from Ensenada, divers tagging calves under cover of night, sealed the cracks. The verdict came on a crisp autumn morning, the judge's gavel falling like a hammer on anvil. Fines in the millions, drilling permits revoked, executives facing charges from wildlife trafficking to environmental endangerment. Monterey exhaled, the news rippling through the wharf like a favorable tide. Fishermen raising mugs at the Sandbar Saloon. Carla Ruiz posting the headline on the harbor master's board with a rare smile. But victory tasted bittersweet. The damaged pods wouldn't reform overnight. Migrations altered by months of interference, and Luna and Sol's release loomed as a test of resilience. The day came in early winter, the Pacific swells gentle under a sky streaked with cirrus clouds. The center's team gathered at the breakwater, Jack and Elena at the forefront. The calves floated in slings toward open water. Luna went first, her body arching free of the harness with a powerful thrust, tail fluking once in farewell before she dove deep. Sol followed, hesitant at the edge, but Luna's distant clicks called him on, the pair vanishing into the blue like whispers carried away. Jack watched until they were specks, a hollow ache in his chest mingling with pride, the sea reclaiming its own, scarred but unbroken. Life settled into a quieter cadence after that. Jack refitted the Sea Whisper for eco-tours, ferrying school groups to spot whales and explain the sanctuary's fragile balance. Elena often joining as the expert voice. The harbor healed in layers, stricter patrols in the slough, community watches for suspicious vessels, and a memorial plaque at the wharf honoring the pod's silent fight. Jack kept Luna's stone talisman on his dashboard, a smooth pebble worn by waves, and on still nights he'd swear he heard faint echoes offshore, clicks carried on the wind, a nod from the deep. In the end, the truth beneath the waves hadn't just shocked the harbor, it had reshaped it, pulling solitary souls like Jack into a wider current of connection and purpose. The ocean remained vast and unforgiving, but now he faced it with eyes wide open. The dolphin's lesson etched into his bones, persistence against the undertow, bonds that outlast the storms. Leave a comment sharing what you thought about this story.